Well, your comments and questions are welcome in the chat window today, to which our presenters will respond both during and after today's event. It's time now for today's high-intensity tech training, Securing the Connected Enterprise Against the Vulnerabilities Created by Today's Converging IoT and OT Systems. We're going to look into the new attack vectors beyond the traditional networks, identify security gaps, show you the market opportunity, and best of all, how to close and implement these IoT and OT security deals. I am thrilled to welcome back to the Tuesday call two of Teleris' most dynamic and powerful presenters, VP of Advanced Networking and Mobility, Graeme Scott, and of course, VP of Cybersecurity, Jason Stein. Hey guys, welcome to you both.
Thanks, Doug. Really glad to be here, and always love it when Steiner and I get to team up on some of this stuff. We have such a good time, the two of us. So really excited to be here. Steiner, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you both?
Good, good. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump right in here. So those of you guys who follow these kind of things know that Stein's going to be really busy next month because it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and there's a ton of amazing things that we've got planned for you guys around that kind of content. So make sure you're checking out the HITT calls as well as our LinkedIn. We're going to be very active posting all kinds of content for you guys that you can use with your customers. But we've got so much of it, we didn't have a chance to get to everything. So we're, Teleris always likes to be ahead of the curve here. So we are getting a kickstart on Cybersecurity Awareness Month by talking about the IoT and OT security risks that are out there in the marketplace. So first off, let's just define OT. When I say OT, we're talking about operational technology. So typically these are the machines, processes, all these kinds of things that are being used within an industrial environment. And as we will find out here today, these types of devices are critical to your customers' operations, and they are under attack. So Chandler, if you want to go ahead and move to the next slide here. So let's start with the big picture, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about IoT in general. And I think what should be obvious to everybody out there is enterprises today aren't just securing laptops and servers anymore. You're basically running smart factories, connected fleet, building systems, healthcare systems. There's all kinds of stuff that's out there, and all of it is connected. So by the end of this year, we'll have 19 billion connected IoT devices worldwide and on pace for over 40 billion by 2030. So that is massive growth. And every single one of those devices is a new doorway into the enterprise, and the bad guys, they know it. So last year alone, ransomware attacks grew by 87%. And Stein, we're seeing automated scans targeting OT protocols. This stat here says 36,000 attempts per second globally. So that's the big picture, Stein. What's going on with this stuff?
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so many different sensors, things with IP addresses that are hitting the network, and they're so far ahead of where we're at, or we don't have the security measures in place. You're seeing artificial intelligence and a lot of these devices hit at a faster rate than we can create security around. So we're going to have to combat AI with AI, which is absolutely crazy. But we're going to be leaning in a lot more with IoT security, OT security, trying to get lots of different flavors. But you're going to see, if you talk to your customers, most of your customers are really having a hard time getting their arms around all the different IP addresses, devices that are hitting their network, and that their employees are, potentially susceptible to clicking on.
Yeah. So, I mean, really bottom line here, the perimeter isn't just the firewall anymore, right? I mean, I know a lot of us are really comfortable at that point in the network, but it's extended so much further beyond there that we really need to implement these kind of controls, protocols, and policies on all of these edge devices, right? And that is, anytime you've got a problem like this for businesses out in the ecosystem, I love it because it just creates opportunity for us as advisors.
100%. It's interesting. And what are we going to have more robotics? I'm surprised that it's only going to be 40 billion devices by 2030. I feel like It's going to be even higher than that. We're probably not projecting accurate numbers because the devices are just hitting at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, and there are more IoT devices connected to the internet now than there are regular devices, just so everybody knows. So we've crossed that threshold a couple of years ago, but this is a massive explosion. Enterprises love data, right? Data is the currency that enterprises business runs on, and IoT and OT devices provide that data. So super critical to operations, and it is vulnerable. So let's move on to the next slide here, Chandler. Just again to take a look at some of these numbers here, and it's really, really stark, right? More devices, more problems. The expanding attack surface is tremendous. Jason talked a little bit about it, but here's some numbers that really kind of put it into perspective here. 2024 alone, 87% year-over-year increase from 2023, as we talked about. 36,000 attacks per second. And that is a 156% attack volume growth. The numbers are crazy, Jason. It's really hard for businesses to stay ahead of that and to manage that on their own.
A breach happens every 14 seconds in the United States, and it makes sense when you're seeing 36,000 attacks per second. There's so many different things that are going on within an organization, and we're not doing enough time in cybersecurity awareness training because nobody wants to do it. Things are getting clicked on. There's a lot of vulnerabilities. You and I always talk about even an aquarium in a casino floor is vulnerable because some of these devices haven't been updated enough. And it just takes so much effort to get your entire IT team. We just moved into a new house and we just added 5 new IP addresses that we never had before. So just think about how many different things a business is doing when it comes to that. And, one of our suppliers offers robo-dogs. First off, $5,000 a month. Give me like 10 of those robo-dogs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I think, when you start to talk about IoT, really you're talking about data collection and certainly those are attack vectors, but when you expand that conversation to OT, I mean, you are talking about major disruptions to business operations when an attack happens there, something goes down. I mean, that is a serious problem. You're talking the bread and butter of that business potentially down for extended periods of time. That can cost a business everything. So what we're going to do here, guys, we're going to go ahead and break down a couple of different challenges that organizations are facing so that you as our tech advisors can start these conversations looking at a couple of key areas, just giving you some tools to go out there and start this conversation with your customers and see where it goes. So Chandler, if you want to move to the next slide. These are the kind of challenges that are happening within the organization. So challenge number 1 is we call visibility gaps, the blind spot crisis. So when organizations were interviewed, only 44% of them said that they maintain any kind of real-time visibility into their operational technology environment. So that means well over half have no idea what's going on within their OT environment. And of course, if you can't see it, how are you going to secure it? These organizations are pretty much flying blind, right, Stein?
Yeah, it's tough. There's not enough tools out there. And let's face it, most organizations, you're logging into 10, 20, 30 different tools to be able to get visibility into your entire network. But when you think about OT, you're talking MRI machines, you're talking fire suppression systems. There's so many different devices that are out there, and a lot of them have some type of software on there, but it's still vulnerable because there's no patching that's available for these devices. So it's really hard to get and manage all the tools that an IT person needs. And most organizations are understaffed. So who's responsible for looking at OT? You need to outsource it and get some of these incredible softwares that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. And I think, Also, a lot of times these devices aren't even added to the network. They're not even operated by the IT team, right? They might be an operational device that's been put in there by someone in the warehouse. You've got a lot of shadow IT type stuff happening as well. So this lack of awareness of what is even operating within the environment is a huge problem. And when you see a number like 44% of organizations maintain real-time visibility, I mean, I would challenge you that it's probably not even that high. Most people aren't even going to admit that they don't know what's going on in their environment. So I'm going to guess it's less than that.
100%. If they don't have to share the statistics, they're not going to.
Right. Well, why throw it out there, right? Let the bad guys know. So let's go ahead and move on to the next challenge. This is a big one, I know, and something that tech advisors run into all the time. We'll call it legacy constraints. So basically, the old stuff that's out there, let's assume they can see their assets just for the sake of argument, right? The next challenge is that a ton of these things are running on legacy systems, all like old technology that you can't even bring up to speed and put some of these monitoring tools and capabilities in place.
Oh, 100%. It's just so tough to be able to patch stuff that have restrictions. Think about some of the old legacy things that we used to joke about, like an AS400. But all these devices, they're not patchable. They have these vulnerabilities that they've had for years. There's all these outdated protocols that we have. There's, authentication that needs to happen. There's, encryption, and we said it twice here because it's so important, but there's a lot of encryption that needs to happen. There's all these things that are locked down from a hardware perspective. It's just not easy to patch some of this stuff. So you become vulnerable in so many different ways.
Yeah, and I think, this idea of vendor lock-in as well, right? Locked in with a single vendor, maybe that piece of equipment or that piece of hardware or the operating system is tied to a specific vendor, and there can be a lot of challenges when that company is not updating their protocols, right? They're behind the times with what they're doing. That creates challenges for the organization. I love this concept of security debt, right? We talk a lot about tech debt, in general as a general concept, but really kind of breaking that out into security debt. I think it's kind of an interesting concept, Jason.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of different things that accumulate over time. It's important to make sure that our environments are being maintained properly. Half the time we even see it in our space that suppliers, vendors go out of business. And so you go and buy an asset from an organization, and then all of a sudden there's no one there to patch it or put something in place to help you, but yet it's not broke, it's not going anywhere, so you leave it in place. But we need to modernize a lot of these things in order to protect them. We need to implement a lot of different policies and controls and procedures in our environments for our IT staffs. And if not, there's possibly vulnerabilities when it comes to compliance and all the different types of regulations that are out there. So a lot of different issues when it comes to that debt that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so good stuff there. Two really, really key problem areas that may exist within your organizations. We got another one here for you, Chandler. If you want to go ahead and move to the next slide. Stein, I know this is one of your favorite things to talk about, right? Compliance and regulation. Depending on what type of business you're in, this may be a significant burden for an organization. And, especially like when it comes to OT and IoT devices that are out there, they are not immune from compliance and regulation that, other, notable IT, assets are.
We saw a massive uptick when it came to compliance and regulations and fines this year in January, and there's only going to be more around AI, more around OT, more around IoT. The EU has really put a lot of really good processes and procedures in place. And, they did GDPR, and then California went and implemented CCPA. Well, it was right around the time that COVID happened. So you saw a lot of the compliances take a little bit of the restrictions away because they were worried that if they implemented all these fines, all the SMB would go out of business. But now, NIST, all these frameworks with HIPAA, they're all coming back and the fines are starting to get levied. And you're going to see CMMC is huge right now. So if you have an organization that is doing business with anybody in the public sector, anybody in the federal government space, they have to be CMMC certified by March of next year, or they will lose millions of dollars in contracts. It's regulated by the government. We have all these different compliances that are in place. And a lot of the things that we're not doing from a patching perspective, from getting our arms around OT, from getting our arms around IoT, and who has access to all those things, can cause a lot of violations, and those fines are going to add up. And some of these companies will be forced to go out of business.
Yeah, and I think the examples we've got on the slide here, the first one there, that's the EU, and they tend to be a little bit ahead of us on some of these kind of things, right? Where they start to implement some of these policies. So I think we can really kind of take a look at what's happening over there to see what's coming. So, to your point, Jason, you're starting to see more and more fines done here. There's more on the way, right? As more of this stuff comes. I mean, this is not something that's going to go away. One thing I really want to point out to our advisors, the little key insight bottom at the bubble on the bottom there, 73% of organizations struggle with regulatory compliance mapping. For us as TAs, that's the kind of thing we love to see, because that means 73% of businesses out there need your help, right? And that's the kind of thing that we love to see. Before we move on to our next slide, had a couple of questions in the chat. I want to just touch on one real quick. When we're talking about legacy technology, a couple people asking for examples. Derek threw out SCADA, right? SCADA stuff, that's a great example of a lot of legacy type tech that's out there. So just for those of you who are wondering, I think that really kind of illustrates what kind of stuff we're talking about. So let's move on to the next slide here, Chandler. This one is the cost of inaction, right? If you've been at one of the Ascends with me, I always talk about, businesses care about two things: making money and saving money, right? The cost of inaction is a major concern for businesses. So the dark blue there is sort of the average cost, and the light blue is kind of the high end of the scale, right? So data breach, the minimum you're talking $4 million for enterprises. Downtime per hour, very significant. And then regulatory fines, also something that can cost businesses a ton of money. And I know, Stein, you've got a lot more research on this kind of stuff as well, right?
Yeah, the breaches are happening, and still the United States is the highest out of pocket when it comes to breaches. I think we're throwing more and more money at cybersecurity, yet we're going to see global criminal activity hit $10.5 trillion from last year, which was 9.6 trillion, which the year before was 8.5. So it's going up $1 trillion a year. Now, the average breach in the United States is $4.3 million, which means that a lot of breaches are really high. And still the average dwell time, meaning that an organization has something malicious living in their environment, is still over 150 days. So it's undetected. Then back to your point, when you got to, we're talking about 73% of organizations need help with their compliance. GRC is the governance, risk, and compliance. And if you bring that up to your IT, decision maker, they're going to say that they're struggling, and it's now a board level conversation. And boards are outsourcing their risk. They want more advisors to come in and advise them, because there's all these fines, there's all this downtime, yet they struggle with a CIO coming in and 3-letter acronyming them to death and saying, we're fine, don't worry about it, we got it, we're about to pass our audit. But passing the audit doesn't mean that you're still compliant. You still have all these things that you have to adhere to. And I think once an IT staff passes that audit, they let things go because they're so small. They're reacting to other issues now. And that's where all of this downtime and breaches will come into play.
Yeah, and I think, just, that 73% stat was a great one. I'm going to throw another one here. So the IoT OT security market is estimated somewhere between 25 and 30 billion right now, growing at about 25% every year. But 81% of organizations still underinvest in OT security. So again, another huge opportunity there, right? Even if they're spending some money, they're not spending enough. They're underinvesting and really creating tremendous risk for the business. And again, for advisors that are able to kind of bridge that gap, have that conversation, there's a huge opportunity there to create some revenue.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. This is absolutely a great door opener. And if you're looking for something that differentiates you, talking about IoT, talking about operational technology, and how an organization really gets their arms around all the different devices is going to separate you from the average person that's coming in trying to sell them, speeds and feeds, as well as, other aspects of the business.
Now, actually, Chandler, if you go ahead to the next slide, this is really what I was just talking about. I forgot to ask you to advance it. But folks, this sort of gives you a visual representation of what Jason and I were just talking about. The one thing that is happening that I think is a real positive is that there is a growing awareness within the industry that this is a problem, right? We've seen some fairly high profile breaches. The one that everybody talks about is, of course, the aquarium. I think was it Caesars or one of the big casinos. I can't remember which one, but
MGM,
shut down
yes.
a bunch of the, that was huge. But there's more of these every single day. And I think businesses are starting to go, hey, man, this is a real vulnerability for us. And again, because of that, I think they're open to having a conversation. That last bullet point, Stein, I know something you talk about all the time. They don't have the skill internally to tackle this stuff.
Yeah, they really don't. And so you can come in and say, listen, are you short on resources? How are you doing when it comes to operational technology, IoT, and all the different advancements there? And how are you aligning with the business goals? What's the primary focus for you and your organization? And how are you able to do that and limit the risks, report to the board, and put more security around those measures in place? There's only a few different things, but we have resources, an incredible deep bench of engineers that will come in and talk to you about OT, talk to you about IoT, make sure that you have the right frameworks in place, make sure that you have the right compliances in place, and also make recommendations on a lot of different tech that's out there that some of your customers may not really realize.
Yeah, good stuff. So Chandler, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. You guys have spent some time with Jason, know he loves stats, right? He's a stats guy. That's his bread and butter. He's really good at delivering those stats and telling us what they mean for us. So Stein, break this one down for us. There's a couple of really alarming statistics on this one that I think we really want to pay attention to.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the first three, the top three. So listen, look at this. IoT security statistics show that 70% of devices have an exploitable flaw. So not only do we need more visibility and more tools, but 70% of the devices on a network have exploitable flaws, but 50% of all devices have at least one critical vulnerability. So imagine not only all the things that you have to deal with as an IT decision maker, a CIO, but then to know that 70% and 50% of all of your devices have these vulnerabilities. But this is the one that got me, Graeme. 1 out of every 3 breaches last year was caused by an IoT device. What are you doing over there with the IoT division?
Sorry, man. We're just trying to collect some data out there, So, but I guess we gotta protect it. It's stark and not surprising because it is it's kind of the forgotten part of the network. And again, everybody talks about security up to the firewall, but it's all that stuff beyond the firewall that's really, really vulnerable. And once you get in there, getting past the firewall, often not a problem. What do we got on the bottom here? I think, we talked a lot about operational disruption on one of our earlier slides. Putting some numbers context around it, I think really kind of drives that point home. $330 billion in operational disruption. And that's last year, right, Stein?
Yeah. So, think about it. That's last year when it was $9 trillion. We're talking what $1/3 of $1 trillion was because of IoT and OT devices. So first off, 16 billion in losses were by companies being down. That's how much money that they lost. But then there was another 330 billion for companies that were impacted because an IoT device took them down for a few minutes or caused disruption where people couldn't get to their site or get to things that they needed in order to purchase. You had mentioned a lot around different percentages going up, but ransomware targeting operational technology, targeting those devices rose by 60% last year. And then, 75% of OT attacks caused disruption and 25% caused complete shutdown. So think about that. If you're a TA on this call, you can not only say, hey, let's talk about your IoT, let's talk about your OT. A lot of companies had operational disruption. Did you have any last year? We're seeing a big rise in attacks. And we want to make sure that you don't have either complete shutdown or some kind of disruption. Do you have an OT security measure in place? If not, would you like a soundboard? Would you like one of our resources to talk to you about best practices, principles, and technology that will help protect your organization?
All right, let's move on, Chandler. So those of you guys have seen me present, I always have I call this my cool story, bro slide, right? It's like, hey, cool story, bro, but what do we do about it as advisors? Like, how do we go out to our customers and start to have a conversation? So I think the first thing that we should do is we should be looking to assess, right? Those first three issues that we really kind of talked about. How do you find those out? Well, you got to take a look and see what's going on within the environment, right? Assess what's happening, assess what exists within the infrastructure, what you've got there to establish what you're dealing with, right? We got to know what we don't know. And I think that 56% of organizations that have no visibility, we want to try and identify what we don't have visibility to. Stein, I know you love to talk about ZTNA, zero trust network segmentation, a great strategy, and then starting to monitor some of this stuff, and then of course governance. So Stein, like a great way to start the conversation right here.
Yeah, so when you start to get into ZTNA, zero trust network access, zero trust network architecture, you're starting to see a better way of doing it, and a lot of organizations are moving towards an SD-WAN with secure access service edge or SASE with zero trust to put better parameters around their employees. And it's better than the traditional VPN way. VPN, you have 70% chance of more vulnerabilities than you do implementing, a newer approach using SD-WAN with ZTNA. ZTNA locks it down in such a better capacity so that the CFO, who has access to everything, can't log into all those different things at once. It makes sure that it verifies that CFO or a decision maker within an organization so that a bad actor doesn't follow them around. It also helps that if somebody's machine were to be compromised, that it doesn't allow that bad actor access to everything that person has without logging in with credentials, doing multi-factor authentication. There's so many great things that ZTNA brings to the table that organizations who don't have it are definitely looking at it. And you're going to see 80% of organizations are still trying to implement ZTNA. So you can ask, is ZTNA a priority for your organization? How are you doing with it? Do you need help? We have different resources that can help you make sure that your environment has a full ZTNA framework deployed. So let us know if we can help you with that.
Yeah, so here's 4 key areas that you can sort of start the conversation, have a conversation, ask some questions that drive at these things. Jason, go to the next slide there, Chandler. You're good. So Jason, this one here, obviously, these are some of the things that you are advising as it relates to IoT and OT. Again, kind of building on our last slide here, some opportunities for our tech advisors to really ask some questions, driving at those 4 topics and starting to look at some things to bring into the organization.
So first, you're going to see a lot more organizations leveraging AI for defense, and it's kind of like, you remember War Games. I'm going to date myself, and I'm going to date
I
you
love
too,
that
because
movie.
it's like, remember the tic tac toe just kept playing into a tie. I
Yeah.
mean, if AI is battling AI, we're just going to, stalemate. That's the hope. And then, to your last point, adopting zero trust is going to be huge, locking down the environments, more segmentation on the network, which gets into a lot of things, Graeme, that you address, and then preparing for cloud and 5G, where all of this stuff is moving right into your wheelhouse. A lot of the things that we need to do from an Internet of Things and an operational technology standpoint starts with the network. We need to access it. We need to lock it down. We need to segment it. We need to have AI battling AI. There's a lot of skills gaps that are, there, that a lot of people are not up to speed with the tech. And then we need to focus on a better incident response. If something bad happens, does my entire team know all the things that I need to do in order to get us back on track? A lot of really unique things that I think are happening, and a lot of them are in your advanced solution.
Yeah, I love it. So let's go to the next slide here, Chandler, just to kind of bring this home. What do you do next? You're a TA on this call. You've heard a lot of stuff that's really interesting, that's kind of piqued your interest. What's next, right? We've maybe had a conversation with some of our customers. We've identified, hey, maybe there's some stuff going on here that I can help with. So what do we do? Well, number one, obviously the Telarus team, myself, Jason, our great team of sales engineers are here to help you guys. We're here to have conversations. We'll help you with some discovery questions. If you think there's an opportunity, kind of lay it out for us. We're here to help. We've got a bunch of great suppliers within the portfolio that have great assessment tools. They can go in, they can take stock of what's going on, analyze some risks, provide some sort of idea of what the business has at stake with some of these challenges. And then, of course, again, partnering with the OT and IoT security vendors within the portfolio. We've got a great group of them, a ton, and we're adding more all the time. One of the big focuses Jason has. And then, of course, high-end value prospects, right? If you work in the manufacturing sector, if you're in energy, if you're in healthcare, transportation, these are areas where there are massive, massive OT technologies deployed, and the urgency is extremely high there. Jason, anything to add to this?
To this slide, no, I think you and I both see a lot of what's next, and a lot of it starts with the network. A lot of it starts with the employees. John, you brought up an interesting question. When it comes to Telarus and our resources, we'll do a cybersecurity training for clients. When it comes to training employees, that's where we'll bring in a supplier. We'll marry them with what they're looking for. We can do audits and assessments. And so there's all different kinds. There's gap assessments, there's security assessments, there's vulnerability assessments. We can come in and help with all those different things. And then from a security awareness training standpoint, we can make sure the industry average says that we make employees spend 45 minutes a year doing cybersecurity awareness training. Let's face it, nobody wants to do it. A lot of opportunity there. Our resources will come in and whiteboard an environment and talk about recommendations, and then we'll bring in the best of the best suppliers. And that's what we really pride ourselves on. I think you're going to see us continuing to add top tier suppliers. They're going to make you look good. IoT, OT, advanced network, SD-WAN, SASE, ZTNA, for all the topics that we just talked about.
Yeah, and just to bring it home here as we welcome Doug back onto the call, the beauty here, guys, is that organizations need help, right? And we as tech advisors love those types of scenarios because that is our bread and butter. So hopefully we brought something to your attention that maybe wasn't totally on your radar today. IoT and OT, there's a lot of different ways to kind of profit from the huge boom that's happening there. Security is just one of them, but definitely something that we want to make sure you guys are talking about with your end user customers. Massive, massive opportunity out there. Doug, looks like we had a lot of questions. I know Jason did a pretty good job of banging out some of them. We have time to tackle a couple other ones here today.
He did do a great job with those. A terrific presentation, you guys. The opportunity on this is just massive, and you brought that to bear in a number of different instances. I'd like to go back because a number of the questions at the beginning really took off the idea of this tech debt and security debt in creating this opportunity for us to take advantage of. But at the same time, it puts those potential clients and customers in a real quandary in terms of where they begin to attack this and with what resources. Can we talk a little bit more about that and some of the ways that advisors can help clients to overcome some of the problems created by that?
Graeme, you want to start?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, the bottom line is when organizations invest money in something, right, regardless of what it is, there's always a reluctance to go and buy something else, right?
Sure.
Because, hey, we've spent money on this. They look at it as, they want to get that ROI curve out of it. They want to make sure that they're not having to re-spend more money to do it, before they've paid that investment off. And the reality is sometimes that's just not possible, right? Things change, things evolve. And we really have to sometimes point out the fact that, hey, listen, back when you bought this, these were not issues, right? When you put this technology in place, these kind of challenges did not exist in the marketplace. People weren't looking at your machine press or your whatever as a potential attack vector. Well, they are now. And I think, the world changes, and sometimes we have to kind of help people realize something that may not have existed previously on the as a threat is now there and prevalent in the organization. And Stein, I know this is a topic that you talk about a lot, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple different types of debt. There's, a financial debt that you have to, and you nailed it. Companies don't want to invest in just in case stuff happens. It's kind of like buying insurance. I mean, imagine we buy insurance and then all of a sudden we never get in a car accident in our entire life. Was it a waste of money? And that's kind of where we're at with security. We have to spend money just in case, and no organization, no board of directors wants to spend money just in case. But then you have this security debt, which is kind of like we need to be able to come in and lock the doors. We have complex environments. We have lack of resources and prioritization. And there's all this security debt, and we need to put resources in place to manage all of these things. But yet we don't necessarily want to spend the money or have budgeted for that money. So there's a lot of different ways that we incur this debt. And it's just in case bad stuff happens, but you have to have it because a breach is happening every 14 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, the insurance analogy is really what nails it, right? I mean, and we can all think about it that way. You have insurance in case. And I think a lot of this stuff too, like, hey, you have to make these changes in case because the cost of something happening is significant, right? We put some numbers up there on the slides earlier. So just use those. I mean, we want to try and drive the point home that, hey, these are things you got to spend money on because the cost of not is significant.
Is worse. Yeah, that's the thing. The cost of spending the money is far less than a $4.8 million breach.
So true. There was a lot of discussion in the chat about the difference between enterprise and SMB customers, of course. And obviously, resources tend to be more limited with SMB markets. And some of the solutions may be a bit more limited as well, but the need is certainly there. Are there ways in which advisors can help smaller customers, SMB markets, begin this journey without having to go full on investment that will take care of some of the greatest concerns or the most easily problematic concerns?
I can start by saying that, look, I sat down with Carnegie Mellon, who had their head of security, and I said, how many are on your team? And I was expecting them to say 10 or 20. He said 500. And I was like, you have 500 security people, you hoarder, spread them around. But still, when you talk to enterprises, a lot of them still have needs, and they're continuing going from 53 security measures in place to putting 56 because it gives them peace of mind. But 90% of North America is SMB. They have limited staff. They cannot afford to not put these security measures in place and outsource a lot of that. 80% of organizations are going to outsource many different components of their cybersecurity because there's not enough resources. And you're at the mercy of your team. If your team comes in and they're Sonic Wall experts, you're going with Sonic Wall. But is it necessarily the best solution for your organization? Our engineers can help with that. You're going to see companies in the SMB are more comfortable outsourcing because that one resource that they have, or two or three resources that they have, cannot staff an organization 24/7. They're more susceptible, or they're more open to that conversation than an enterprise by far.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it, Stein, right? For an SMB organization, this is even more prevalent because a lot of times they don't have the resources to address this on their own. We didn't have a breakdown of it, but I would guess if you're looking at that sort of real-time awareness stat that we shared at the beginning, a huge chunk of that's going to be in the SMB space because they just don't know. They don't know what's going on. So they need the help more than ever. The opportunity is huge there. Just getting an idea of what's going on, where their vulnerabilities are. And they might not be able to spend all the money right away to address everything that they've got. But putting their head in the sand and saying, "Hey, I'm too small. Nobody's coming after my business." That's a sentiment we hear a lot from SMB, and it's just not accurate. I mean, those guys are the ones that people are going after because they don't have protections in place. So starting out with awareness, what are my vulnerabilities? What's going on in my environment that I need to be aware of? I think that's a great place to start with SMB customers and just let them know what's going on, and then develop a plan to fix it. It might not be overnight, but something over time that they can address those vulnerabilities.
And AI battling AI. Let's get ready to rumble. I like it. Great presentation today, guys. There's a lot of compliments in the chat and a few more questions. Graeme and Jason will be here for a few more minutes. They'll take a look at a few of those questions and comments in there and try to get you an answer. I've got to move on, but terrific job today, guys. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Man, that was good stuff.